This is a fun one. Friends of the show, Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. Morning, Joe.
Employees of the show at the rate they're going.
Yes, yeah, exactly. They're going to take Jake's job if he's not careful. If he doesn't stop slacking and start showing up.
I told you not to set him up with that matchmaker.
Yeah, right. Exactly. No good deed goes unpunished, right?
Yeah.
Morning Joe has a complete meltdown over the blowback from him visiting Trump at Mar-a-Lago. So, one rule of show business that kind of transcends all mediums, whether it's podcasting or television or comedy, is you don't go negative on the crowd, right? You don't want to go negative on the audience. Now, with comedy, sometimes if you do crowd work, there's a little roasting, that's understood, but you never want to actually go to a negative place on the audience and chide the audience in a serious way. But ratings are not good at MSNBC, and so Scarborough was pretty frustrated. And so he decided he would lecture the audience as to why it was a great thing that he went to Mar-a-Lago to kiss Trump's ring.
You can do two things at the same time. You can say he had fascist rhetoric and still go in and talk to him.
Yeah.
You know why I do that?
Yeah.
To get the read of the man. You know why I went in and talked to Macron? To get the read of the man at a crucial time in EU funding and NATO funding. You know why I went?
All right, I'm sorry. I just got to say, weren't they among the people who were hysterical about Tucker Carlson interviewing Putin?
I mean, I would imagine.
I fully agree that they're not journalists, so there's that. But I fully agree with the theory that if you're a journalist, you should be talking to anybody. And there should be no backlash for who you talk to.
Right.
That's true of politicians as well. Like, this is it's a pretty recent idea that you're not allowed to talk to your enemies. You can only talk to your friends. That's an idea that's infected politics. But even more nonsensical, really, is in journalism. Your job is to report. You should be able to talk to anybody. But I don't think that's a principle they've generally run their show by.
To leaders in the Middle East who were angry at the United States, and I sat there and I listened to them attacking me personally for 45 minutes because of U.S. policy. You know why I do that? To get the read of the leader, to get the read of where the country's going. So I can come back here and talk to you and let you know what the hell is going on.
With context and
give you context, insight, and background. You know everybody we have on the show that's a reporter? It's what they do every day. They speak on background.
Okay, I mean, sure. I mean, this is what happens when you cultivate an audience that just can't handle that.
Right, yes. Yeah. You wanted them, you got them.
Right. You wanted them, you got them. Right. I mean, this is chickens coming home to roost. The strategy of otherizing Trump was never the smart move. The right way to oppose Donald Trump was always to oppose Donald Trump on policy. That's why the Democrats took the House back in the midterms. It's why they beat him in 2020. When they try and otherize him, when they try and paint the stakes as transcendent of what we consider to be political discourse, you lose. And now the hard lesson that the MSNBC audience has learned is that those norms and guardrails that you thought were so precious really aren't so precious. You know, we had so much to cover tonight that we didn't get to do the Obama Foundation speech, but Obama goes up at the Obama Foundation and he says, well, turns out democracy isn't really a priority for voters. Yeah, no shit. It's not a priority for voters. I could have told you that. It's not a priority for voters because voters hate democracy. It's not a priority for voters because democracy is supposed to be the means to an end, meaning the empowerment of ordinary people. When democracy does not,
they don't fetishize voting for its own sake.
Exactly. Not everybody is an aspiring Atlantic magazine columnist who has these high-minded theories about the virtues of the democratic system. You have to make that system work for people. When that system doesn't work for people, when people think democracy, they think health insurance CEOs denying care to people, killing them for profit. well, that's when you have a breakdown in the system, as we learned this week, did we not? And the same goes for Trump, and the same goes for this just miserably failed strategy of otherizing Trump at MSNBC, and that has landed them where they are now, which is a failed network. And that's why the stakes were as existential as they were at MSNBC, because it wasn't existential for the country necessarily. It was existential for them. So The Independent reports viewers continue to bolt from Morning Joe amid fallout over hosts kissing the ring at Mar-a-Lago. MSNBC viewers continue to give Morning Joe the cold shoulder following the revelation that hosts Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski trekked to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President-elect Donald Trump. The precipitous ratings drop comes at the worst possible time for the morning talk show. On Wednesday, parent company Comcast announced that it was spinning off most of NBC Universal's cable channel lineup amid rampant cord cutting, including cable news networks MSNBC and CNBC. According to Nielsen, the 4-hour broadcast of Morning Joe drew only 680,000 total viewers on Tuesday, representing a 12% dip from Monday's airing. The program only averaged 86,000 viewers in the coveted advertising demographic of adults aged 25 to 54, also down 12% from the previous day. Now, you think about that. What does that tell you? The coveted demo, 25 to 54, because they are in their prime earning years, so they spend the most money. So the advertising, people watch those people watching. Only 86,000 out of that many hundreds of thousands. The audience is so old. It's so old. And it's dwindling. It's dwindling. Not as much, incidentally, as the primetime host, which we'll get to in a minute. Go ahead.
Even mid-size YouTube channels do better than that.
Yeah,
like that is really with the resources that these cable channels have behind them to only have 80. And you can assume when you see a YouTube channel that has 150,000 views, the majority of those views are in that demo, just because of who watches these kinds of programs on YouTube.
Exactly. The online audience skews a lot younger than the cable TV audience, which means it's more precious to the advertisers, way more than MSNBC now. Compared to the average viewership for 2024, Morning Joe's total audience on Tuesday was down 38% and 37% in the key demo. Tuesday also represented the third lowest rated Morning Joe broadcast of the year. This further continues the slide that began the moment Scarborough and Brzezinski revealed on Monday that they had recently sat down with Trump to restart communications. The moment the husband and wife pair opened Monday's show by dramatically announcing they'd sought to mend fences with the incoming president after spending years describing him as a threat to democracy and a fascist, droves of MSNBC's devoted anti-Trump viewers flipped the channel. So in the middle of that broadcast, they lost people. They had people turn off. Yeah, in the middle of the show. That's it.
Yeah, that sounds like the resistance libs I know.
Exactly. While it's typical,
they met with Trump.
Yeah,
that's it. That's a remote.
While it's typical for the show to grow its audience throughout the morning, Morning Joe lost viewers immediately after the announcement. During the 6 a.m. block, the program averaged 839,000 total viewers and 113,000 in the 25 to 54 demo. The next hour, though, overall viewership dropped to 694,000 and sunk 38% in the demo. So that was the immediate aftermath of the announcement that they went to Mar-a-Lago. They have experienced a drop in ratings. Ironically, though, Joe and Mika have actually fared pretty well by comparison to the primetime hosts. The primetime hosts have actually done even worse. So Fox News reports MSNBC's Joy Reid loses roughly half her viewers since the election. Primetime hosts also struggle.
Well deserved.
Absolutely. MSNBC host Joy Reid and her primetime colleagues have faced a brutal decline in viewership since the election. The Readout has shed 47% of its total audience, averaging just 759,000 viewers after averaging 1.4 million viewers throughout 2024 leading up to Election Day, according to Nielsen Media Research. Reid lost even more viewers among the advertiser-coveted demographic 25 to 54 age group, losing a whopping 52% of them, now averaging only 76,000 key demo viewers. Reed's MSNBC primetime colleagues have also suffered devastating losses in viewership over the past month. The network's primetime lineup has lost a whopping 53% in total viewers, averaging at 621,000, and an astonishing 61% of viewers in the key demo, averaging 57,000. 57,000. Wow. I mean, we get between YouTube and Rumble close to 57,000 views per live stream now on average. When we're lucky enough to hit the Rumble homepage, we get more than that on Rumble alone. On Rumble alone, we get more than that when they feature us on the homepage. That is amazing. That is amazing. That's the average prime time viewership here. We don't have to read all of these here. Rachel Maddow went from 2.4 million to 1.4 million. She's lost 56% in the key demo, just 103,000. Chris Hayes, 56% of his key demo viewers. Jen Psaki, 61% of her key demo viewers. And this is the ultimate trend that you're looking at here. This was a Gallup study done in mid-October. Americans' trust in media remains at trend low. That's right. So Americans continue to register record low trust in the mass media, with 31% expressing a great deal or fair amount of confidence in the media to report the news fully, accurately, and fairly, similar to last year's 32%. Americans' trust in the media, such as newspapers, television, and radio, first fell to 32% in 2016 and did so again last year. Funny how that works. The 2 years where trust in media sunk to a low are the 2 years that Trump won the presidency. How do you like that? For the third consecutive year, more U.S. adults have no trust at all in the media, 36%, than trusted a great deal or fair amount. Another 33% of Americans express not very much confidence. So we'll take a look at some of these trend lines. This is kind of fascinating. So this goes from 1972 to 2024. As you can see, just a huge drop overall in the percentage of people who trusted a great deal or a fair amount, from the low 70s in the mid 1970s now to the mid 30s. If you look at partisans' trust, and this is what we've been saying, we've been singing this tune the whole time, is that the reason why all of the meaningful energy on the left is and must be post-duopoly is because of this. Yep. I've said it is not simply the DNC. It's not simply the party bosses. It's not simply the donors. It's not even just the media. It's the voters who cannot break the habit of mainstream media consumption until perhaps now, which is what makes this kind of an exciting time. So look at the partisans' trust in the media. Look at how the Republicans' trust in the media just collapsed after 1998, which was the year of the Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky scandal, where they were gaslit into believing that there was really nothing to see there. And from there, look at that. A spike. It just plummeted and has remained very low since. The Democrats, as you can see, not that much change from a little over 70% trust in the media to 54 now. But if you look at this, look what happened in 2016 to Democrats' trust of mainstream media. 2016, it had reached a record low among Democrats. But then when Donald Trump won, what happened to that? They flocked to MSNBC. That was the golden years of MSNBC, was that first Trump term. If you look where it says 2016, about three quarters of the way across to the right, that's where it's reaching a record low for Democrats. And then Trump wins and it spikes. And that's why that resistance liberal media enjoyed a real golden age during Trump term 1. Looks like not the same is in store for them during Trump term 2. And
okay, well, I will say before you move on, I've watched that pretty closely. And yeah, even the libs are starting to catch on. Because generally they have been around 70%. Right. Usually the polling on them is around 70%, which is about what it was for the general public before that collapse. And then there was this big split where the Democrats continued to trust the media as much as people did in the late 70s, while independents and Republicans caught on much more quickly. And even now with these numbers, over half of them have not figured it out yet, but it is starting to occur to them that listening to these narratives is not doing anything for them. You can see it post-election. Like, I'm going to cover the Supreme Court trans hearing, and I saw some people virtue signal about that. Not nearly what you would have seen if that case went to court 3 years ago.
Right.
Like, this is what I'm talking about when I say there's going to be a big cultural shift. Nobody likes to be a big fucking loser. Nobody likes to be shut out of power. Nobody likes to be ridiculed and mocked and marginalized. As much as these people like to claim marginalized identity, that was only through the bizarre logic of a very warped version of intersectionality in which there was this oppression Olympics going on so that it became a way to achieve social status, claiming to be marginalized. They don't actually want to be marginalized. Once the cultural conversation has really moved on, as this election kind of signaled to them that it has, that's why you're not hearing very much of that. They're going to move on. The kind of whole business model that MSNBC represents, and I think the owners are catching on to that, but by their actions of spinning it off and talking about changing the name and reducing it to a well-funded startup, the whole thing is very quickly going to appear as a relic of the past. It feels that way already.
Yeah, well, as you can see there, I mean, a pretty big drop this year, down to 54. It was up in the mid 70s. It was basically as high as it had ever been on average until this year, where it's at a mere 54%. Now,
well, I wrote a couple of articles about that, about, you know, if you bought a car that blows up in the driveway every time you put the key in, people would stop buying it.
Right.
And the libs just kept buying it no matter how many times they told, oh no, Hillary's gonna win in a rout. She might win Texas. They kept coming back. Their reaction to that whole collapse of the media was they all had to show you how they had just subscribed to the Washington Post and the New York Times, the same people who had completely misled them about the result of the election, to show you how committed they are to democracy and anti-Trump as an act of resistance. They were subscribing to the same people who had gotten it completely wrong. It seems like this election finally shattered that illusion that imbibing this infotainment is actually worth their time, because they're not getting any payoff.
Yeah, so these are the last graphic that I'll show you here, these three charts, which just shows you trust in various institutions. Now, the executive branch, obviously, this was taken while Joe Biden was in power, so you could basically take that as a favorability rating of sorts. It's not really much of a surprise that the Democrats would view the executive branch of the government more favorably with a Democrat's in office. But even that being what it is, look at those charts. Look at how much closer the independent lines are to the red lines than they are to the Democrat lines. Like, look at how you could see how out of touch the Democratic Party is with the public with just these three chart lines here, because the independents are so much closer to the Republicans in terms of their view of these different institutions than the Democrats are. The only institution that the Democrats express less trust in than independents and Republicans, not surprisingly, the judicial branch, because it's a right-wing Supreme Court now. So that's as predictable as the Democrats' high approval of the executive under Joe Biden. But if you look at that, that really tells you just how out of touch they have gotten, that the independent line is so much closer to the red line than it is to theirs. And so it goes beyond trust in media. It's trust in all of these institutions. But I think the collapse of the liberal media, the collapse of the resistance media, the implosion of MSNBC is obviously a very, very positive thing. It's a completely necessary thing. And now that this has happened, you know, I kind of talked to Russell offline, as, you know, the show and the country, we're entering a new time now. We're entering a new era now. Part of what was so vexing and so infuriating about the libs is that they were an obstacle to building actual left power. and they were an obstacle to meaningful left resistance to an ascendant right. I consider them pretty much out of the way right now. They are more or less an irrelevant faction at this point. Now, there is a chance they make a comeback. There's a chance that Trump really blows this, and that provides an opportunity for these people to make a comeback. That is why it is incumbent upon us to make sure that that does not happen, that any resurgent left resurges, if you will, on our terms and not theirs. That is absolutely imperative, because as you can see now, the stakes are quite high. This second Trump term is going to hit very different from the first one. The world is a much more fragile and much more dangerous place than it was in 2016. And it wasn't a picnic blanket in 2016 either, but it's worse now, as you can see. And so there's going to have to be a real reckoning that happens on our terms, not on MSNBC's terms. This collapse in resistance liberal media was absolutely necessary for our work to mean something. And I feel like it means more now because of what we just said. Like, we get, on a lucky night, more viewers than on MSNBC, than primetime MSNBC hosts. We get more. We're a relatively small YouTube show. We get more viewers on a good night than MSNBC will. And so that's a good sign.
Yeah, I think that the Democratic Party, whatever it becomes, will not be that Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer party. It can't be. It just can't be. That's why they're talking about AOC, because they're trying to figure out how they can be the same party with a different wrapper.
Right.
But they are going to have to fundamentally change. And I think ultimately they will, in a way that's akin in the end, for anyone who's hoping for a big leftward change in the Democratic Party. What they're more likely to do is going to be akin to the New Democrats. They're going to get Trumpy.
Right.
They're going to look at the lay of the land. They're definitely going to listen to the Carvilles and such, and drop a lot of the DEI, the LGBTQ plus. They're going to drop that from their rhetoric. That's going to be basically banished from the mainstream of the party. And economically, they're gonna follow. It depends if what Trump does either works on the face of it, or he gets lucky like Bill Clinton did, and an economic boom for other reasons coincides with his presidency. Either way, because nobody gets into the weeds of why there was an economic boom during Clinton. They just think it was him, even now, and it was not. It happened to be he was president when the world was being wired for the internet. Anyone could have been president. There would have been an economic boom. But if you get an economic boom, they're gonna adopt these kind of libertarian small government economic policies. They're not going to turn around and adopt the Bernie Sanders model of government. Absolutely no way.
No.
So that is a big part of why even now we're not saying, well, this is the opportunity to reform the Democrats. There is no such opportunity. The only thing you can do with the Democrats is destroy them.
Right. And they are certainly on their way there. I just did some quick math while you were talking. So yeah, our last stream, which was a morning stream, which are not the highly rated ones, got 32,000 viewers overall between live viewers and repeat viewers. So what's the key demo for the average MSNBC primetime host? 57,000. So yeah, we're more than halfway there on a morning show.
On a morning
channel
show.
with 78,000 YouTube subs, 21,500.
With this, on Sunday night, our flagship show.
Yeah, this will probably beat them. Yeah, when all said and done. So that's a good sign. A very good sign.
It's good for us.
Good, yeah, especially for us. It's an especially good sign for us, which is nice that kind of works out.
Please clap.